Hi everybody, this is your narrator Ollie, and I hope you're ready to relax to our story today. In this tale called Broken Images, we will follow two princely brothers, one a hunter of forests and one a hunter of dreams, into a mountain shrine where gods, spirits, and stone statues seem to trade places, and where the boundary between vision and reality grows beautifully thin. Let the sound of rain and wind imagine themselves around you as we begin. Chapter 1. Two Brothers, Two Paths. Once, in an old land of rice fields and river mist, there lived two young princes. They were brothers, yet as different as sun and moon. The elder brother loved motion and the open air. From the first pale streak of dawn until the last glow faded in the west, he wandered the forests with bow and arrows, following the tracks of deer, listening for the rustle of birds. His body was strong and quick, his eyes bright and keen. He was happiest when his feet were on the mountain paths and the scent of pine and leaf mold rose around him. The younger brother moved in another world. He delighted in books and in the vast country of thought. He would sit by windows or beneath trees, turning pages slowly or gazing into the distance as if reading in the air itself. When he spoke or sang, gentle songs of love and battle and green fields came forth, and stories of fairies and of the age when the gods themselves walked the earth. His eyes were soft, like someone who had seen wonders in the dark and carried their light inside him. The people of the palace sometimes wondered which of the two paths was better, the path of action or the path of contemplation. But the brothers loved one another deeply, and each rejoiced in the other's gifts. Chapter 2. A summer morning's wandering on a bright day in early summer, when the air was warm but not yet heavy, the elder prince rose before dawn, as was his custom, and shouldered his bow. He greeted his brother lightly and vanished into the forest, following a trail that led toward the deeper hills. The younger prince watched him go, then took up a woven book bag. Instead of dense scrolls, he carried a small volume of tales and poems, something light enough for wandering. He walked alone along a narrow path beside a clear stream. The water ran over stones and pebbles with a sound like whispered talk. Yellow mimulus flowers, spotted and bright, grew along the bank. He bent to look at them, delighted. To his imagination, they were not mere blossoms, but coins of another realm. These are the money of the fairies, he thought. With such coin one might purchase all the joys of their hidden land. Smiling at his own fancy, he let the idea follow him like a pleasant tune. The day seemed to open before him, wide and full of possibility. He did not hurry. Time for a dreamer moves differently than for a hunter. Chapter 3. The Stairway of the Shrine. After he had walked for some time, the trees parted, and he found himself before a flight of stone steps, 100 in number. They rose in a long, steady line, worn by the feet of many pilgrims, coated here and there with moss so old that it seemed as much a part of the stone as the gray itself. On each side of the stair sat guardian lions carved from the same rock, their expressions fierce yet strangely watchful. Beyond the steps, a small shrine stood, its roof curving softly against the sky. Behind the shrine, beyond all human architecture, towered the sacred mountain known as Fuji, the mystic mountain. On that day, it was white from snow, even in summer, its summit pure and untroubled, while smaller hills clustered around its base like worshippers in prayer. The dreamer stood still and gazed. "Oh, matchless Fuji," he thought, "so calm, so clear against the sky. To look upon you is to hear silent music, the kind that fills the heart without sound." His spirit grew quiet. Then, with a sense of reverence, he began to climb the moss-grown steps. As he moved upward, he fancied that the stone lions stirred. Their massive paws seemed suddenly light. In his inner vision, they rose and padded softly after him, guardians accompanying a guest into the presence of the unseen. By the time he reached the upper landing, he felt sure they stood now at the inner gate, still as statues, yet alert as living creatures. Chapter 4. Noon in the Temple. Inside the shrine, the air was cool and still. No breeze reached here. The only movement came from the thin threads of incense smoke that curled and hung, forming delicate shapes before slowly dispersing. Dim lamps glowed, casting soft light on gilded decorations, bronze vessels, and polished mirrors used for ancient rites. The dreamer stepped lightly, as though entering the inner chamber of a dream. A hush lay over everything, the very silence almost audible. Then he heard singing. The song seemed at first to be part of the echoing stillness, but as he turned, he saw someone standing at his right. It was a man, yet more than a man. He was taller and more radiant than any mortal the prince had ever seen. His face shone with the timeless freshness of youth that never fades. In his arms he cradled a small child, perhaps a year old, and he was crooning a gentle melody that rocked the little one toward sleep. The dreamer watched as the child's eyelids fluttered closed. The tall figure smiled with tender satisfaction, as if a great burden had just become lighter. Curiosity overcame the prince's shyness. He asked who the child might be. Chapter 5. Jizo and the Children of the River. The shining figure answered with a calm voice. The being in his arms, he explained, was not an ordinary child, but a spirit. He himself was Jizo, guardian of the souls of children. The dreamer felt his heart ache as Jizo spoke of the sandy riverbed in the afterworld, the place called Sinokawara. There, he said, wander the souls of little ones who have left the world too soon. They arrive alone, as they must, calling for parents who cannot hear them. Their small hands reach out to the empty air. Their task is to pick up stones and build them into towers, each stone a prayer offered for the ease of their parents' hearts. But in the dark hours, cruel ogres, Oni of the night, come to topple the towers, scattering the stones and frightening the children. Jizo's voice held both sorrow and resolve, as he described how he received permission from the Great One to go to them. He calls to the lost souls with words of comfort. They flock to him like birds seeking shelter. He hides them within the wide sleeves of his robe and gathers them close against his chest. In his arms they feel light and cold, he said, like the morning mist clinging to the mountains, but he bears them patiently until their fear quiets. The dreamer listened, moved to the core. He thought of all the mothers who had wept for children they could no longer hold. Here was someone who held them still. The child in Jizo's arms stirred and murmured, so the guardian began to pace slowly through the temple court, rocking and humming until its spirit slept once more. Time passed without measure. Noon slipped toward afternoon. The dreamer almost forgot that he had ever lived outside this sacred space. Chapter 6. The Lady of 1,000 Arms. As the temple's shadows lengthened, another figure crossed the threshold. She was a lady of surpassing grace. Her robe was the soft gray of distant rain clouds, and her sandals gleamed like moonlit silver. She moved with quiet assurance, as if she had walked through countless worlds. When she spoke, her voice was tender yet firm, carrying the weight of long compassion. She introduced herself as the Merciful One, the woman who, out of love for humankind, had turned away from final peace. Heaven had been open to her, the gate of nirvana had stood ready. Yet she had chosen to remain, that she might continue to help those still caught in sorrow. The Great One, she said, had granted her 1,000 arms, each capable of offering aid, and in each hand she carried some gift, remedies for suffering, ways out of despair. She told the dreamer that when he wandered in his visions, he would see her sailing in a lotus boat across a mystic lake, always seeking those in need. In that moment, his heart recognized her as Kwannon, the same merciful lady whose image Sayun Zenji would one day honor on another mountain far away. Awe filled him. To meet such a being made his everyday life seem suddenly small. Yet her gaze was so warm that he did not feel crushed, only invited. Chapter 7. Benton and the Sons of the Sea. No sooner had the merciful lady's presence settled into the shrine than another figure arrived, cloaked in blue, the color of deep water. Her voice, when she spoke, had a musical depth, like a well-loved instrument. She named herself as Benton, goddess of the sea and patron of song. Around her, though invisible to ordinary eyes, gathered dragons whose green scales glimmered faintly and whose eyes shone like polished opals. They seemed to coil and stretch beneath her feet, both guarding and bearing her. She greeted the dreamer with a smile, recognizing in him someone who held music in his heart even when no instrument was at hand. Behind Benton spilled a group of laughing youths, their faces bright, their arms reaching out in welcome. They announced themselves as her sons, children of the sea. They urged the dreamer to visit their cool caverns beneath the waves, where shells rang like bells and tides sang softly through hidden passages. The prince felt as if the shrine had become a crossroads of everything beautiful and strange. Gods and spirits moved as easily as people in a marketplace, yet each carried a quiet majesty. He realized that the songs he had composed in the palace were only faint echoes of these living presences. Chapter 8. The Road God, the Three Apes, and the Woman of the Ways. More visions followed. The god of roads entered, dusty from long traveling, yet smiling as if every direction were dear to him. With him came 3 messengers in the form of apes. The first covered his eyes with both hands, choosing to see no evil thing. The second pressed his palms over his ears, refusing to hear evil words and cries. The third held his hands over his mouth, determined not to speak harm. Together they formed a moving lesson. The dreamer watched them with quiet delight, and wondered how one might live such principles in the noisy halls of the world. After them appeared a figure far more unsettling, a woman whose role lay in the world beyond death. She was the keeper of garments at the crossroads of the 3 ways, where souls must pay a toll before passing on. Those who come with nothing, unable to offer payment, she strips of their remaining clothes, leaving them shivering at the threshold, bereft of covering, unable to move forward. Her presence cast a chill even within the warm, incense-laden air. The dreamer felt pity for such souls, stalled between one life and the next. Yet even this grim figure belonged to the order of things. Perhaps, he thought, she too served a necessary truth. Visions came and went, faces, forms, symbols of forces larger than any single human story. The shrine became a living book in which myths stepped down from the pages and walked around him. He lost all sense of the passing hours. Chapter 9. Storm, Lantern, and the Brother's Voice. While the younger prince was lost in his visions, the world outside changed. Clouds gathered, wind rose, sweeping across the hills and setting the trees to swaying. Rain began to fall, first gently, then with increasing force. Night dropped like a curtain. Thunder muttered among the mountains. Inside the shrine, the dreamer remained unmoving. The storm sounds blended into the background of his experience, like distant drums beneath the music of the gods. Suddenly, beyond the great doors, footsteps hurried up the stone stairs, splashing through puddles. A voice, raw with worry, called out again and again, each time more desperate. "Brother, where are you?" The temple doors burst open. A figure strode in, holding a lantern whose light swung wildly, flinging gold onto the walls. It was the hunter. Rain dripped from his hair and garments, but his energy filled the room. His eyes swept the dim interior with the focus of one used to tracking elusive prey. When he saw his younger brother, safe and whole, he crossed the distance in long steps. He cupped the dreamer's face between his large, warm hands, still breathless from his climb. He confessed that he had wandered half the night searching forest paths and riverbanks, blaming himself for leaving the dreamer alone. The younger prince blinked, still partly in another realm. He spoke softly of having been with gods and spirits all night long, unable to pull himself away. To him, the shrine felt charged with sacred presence. He believed that if his brother looked around carefully, he too would see what the statues hid. Chapter 10. Stones and Scented Fields. The hunter, still holding the lantern high, turned slowly in a circle. The flickering light swept across gilded fittings and old bronze, across carved shapes and dusty alcoves. He saw not radiant guardians nor lotus boats, not laughing sea boys nor solemn road gods. He saw only a row of worn stone figures, statues of Jizzo and other deities, their faces softened by age, their feet crusted with moss. To him, they were broken images, remnants of something once honored and now nearly forgotten. He said as much, his tone neither mocking nor reverent, only honest. The dreamer looked at the same figures and felt differently. To his sight, they were gray because they were sad. They were sad because people no longer remembered what they stood for. In neglect, they had turned inward, like musicians whose instruments gathered dust. Yet his brother's hand on his shoulder was real and strong. The storm outside was real. The danger he might have faced in the forest was real. The hunter gently urged him toward the door. Whatever visions had filled the shrine, the night was deep and cold, and home was far. Together they stepped out into the rain-washed darkness. As they descended the steps, the air smelled fresh and new. The younger prince drew a long breath. He remarked on the sweetness rising from the bean fields after the rain, a homely scent, so different from incense and mystic smoke, yet dear in its own way. At the foot of the steps, the hunter laughed softly and told him to bind his sandals securely. He challenged him to a race back to their dwelling, promising the simple joy of running side by side through the glistening fields. The dreamer tightened his straps, rain cooled his face. His heart held both the shrine's visions and the warm reality of his brother's presence. Then the two of them ran, one swift from long practice, the other carried by a new, lighter step across earth that seemed, for that moment, to belong equally to gods and men. Closing reflection, seeing with different eyes. The story of the two brothers ends with them disappearing into the night, one lantern swinging, their laughter mingling with the fading rain. But its images linger. We have walked with a hunter whose faith lies in strong limbs, keen eyes, and the simple goodness of the world as it is. We have sat beside a dreamer who sees holy figures in stone, hears voices in silence, and finds entire worlds inside a quiet temple. Both brothers love truly, the hunter in action, the dreamer in contemplation. Both are needed. The shrine itself holds their difference like a mirror. To one, it shows broken statues. To the other, living gods. Perhaps the truth lies not in choosing one view over the other, but in understanding that each of us carries a different lamp. Some lights reveal the path beneath our feet. Others reveal the shapes that hover just beyond ordinary sight. As you settle now into rest, you might ask yourself, where do you tend to stand? In the clear, practical beam of the hunter's lantern, or in the soft glow of the dreamer's inner light? And is there, somewhere between them, a place where broken images become whole again, where ordinary stone remembers that it once represented something sacred? This is your narrator, Ali, thanking you for sharing this quiet journey through storm and shrine, and wishing you dreams where the gods you most need walk gently beside you, whether you see them clearly or only feel their presence in the sweet air after rain. For more stories that can help you relax, don't forget to like and subscribe.